The lantern that wouldn't get closer. This happened when I was 21. I grew up in Oregon and spent most weekends camping with my friend Kyle. We weren't daredevils, just cheap. The woods were our free movie theater. Wind in the trees, night animals, a sky full of stars. Nothing ever felt dangerous until the night of the lantern. We hiked a lesser-known trail off the Santiam, crossed a creek, and set up camp in a hollow where the ground felt like a sponge. The tree canopy was thick and the air smelled like wet metal. We cooked hot dogs, told dumb stories, and were in our sleeping bags by 10. Around midnight, I woke to a soft, steady sound. Not an animal. It was a whisper of radio static like you hear between stations. I thought I was dreaming, but then Kyle sat up and asked, "You hear that?" We both did. Static. Gentle, like it was coming from behind the trees. Then a faint yellow light slid between the trunks. It looked like an old lantern moving, but the glow never swung and it didn't brighten or dim when it moved. It just hovered 5 or 6 trees away. I called out, "Hey," and the static stopped. The lantern didn't. I've met hunters and rangers out there. People pass through at night. We weren't worried at first. We figured someone was night hiking. I stepped out of the tent and waved. The lantern paused and stayed perfectly still. The static started again, a little louder now. It reminded me of a tape recorder chewing a cassette. "Need help?" I shouted. A voice floated out from the static. It was flat like a bad recording. "Hey," the exact way I just said it. Same pitch, same tone. Kyle whispered, dude." I tried again. "You okay? You okay?" The voice answered. Same voice, same rhythm, like it was copying me half a second later. We stood there, shivering in the damp. The lantern never got closer. The voice never said anything first. It only gave back what we said just a beat late, wrapped in static. Finally, Kyle snapped and walked toward it. He had a tiny flashlight he kept flicking on and off, trying to see around the trees. I followed because I wasn't going to stand there alone. We stepped around one trunk, then another. The lantern stayed the same distance away, not brightening, not dimming, not moving left or right, just always a few trees ahead. The forest got thicker. We started seeing the same kind of fungus on every trunk, white discs stacked like plates. The ground sucked at our shoes. I told Kyle to stop. He did, his breath fogging in the cold. The light stopped too. We were 30 yards from camp now. I could no longer see the orange of our coals. "Hello?" I tried. The voice came back. "Hello?" A perfect mirror. "Say something first," Kyle called. "Say something first," it said. "Okay," I said, and stuck my hand in my pocket. I had a cheap keychain recorder, a thing I used in class to save notes. I held it up and pressed record. "Who are you?" I asked. "Who are you?" It answered. The static crackled, and for a second I heard something else under it. Breathing. Slow, wet breathing like someone with a chest cold. We both stepped back. The light held still. That was when I realized the glow wasn't coming from a flame. There was no flicker, no warmth. It was like a pale circle painted in the air. Then 40 feet to our left, we heard a zipper rip up a tent. Our tent fast, one clean zip, we ran. We didn't even talk about it, we just turned and ran. Branches slapped our faces. When we reached camp, the lantern was gone. The zipper of our tent was all the way open, the flap breathing in and out. Our backpacks were piled outside in a neat stack like someone had unpacked us. Nothing was missing. Not a dollar, not a knife, not the car keys. But the order of things was wrong. Our sleeping bags rolled tight and set side by side. Our boots placed toe to toe. Our food bag tied off with a different knot than Kyle used. It felt like someone had been inside our life for a second and tried to put it back. We threw everything into the car by 2 a.m. We drove to a lit gas station and sat there shaking. The static was gone. The woods felt like a dream you try not to fall back into. 2 days later, I remembered the recorder. I played it at Kyle's place. You can hear us asking questions and then the double of our own voices. But there's another thing I didn't notice that night. Between our words, if you turn the volume way up, you hear whispering, not echoing us. Not copying. Layered under everything, it's counting. 1. Breath. 2. Breath. 3. Slower. 4. And then silence. Then our tent zipper sound rips loud on the tape. Like the recorder was inside our tent when it happened. We weren't holding it then. The last 3 seconds of the file are faint, but I've listened 100 times. There's a new whisper at the end. It's my voice. It says my name. But I didn't say my name that night. The recorder was in my pocket when we left. After we got home, it was hanging from a shoelace looped around my bedroom doorknob. I never camped there again. Stax, this one isn't mine. It's my cousin Hannah's from 2019. She took her husband and their 7-year-old son to a campground in Pennsylvania. Normal place. Fire pits, numbered sites, water pumps, a ranger shack with stickers and postcards. They pitched by a creek and spent the day rock hopping and roasting marshmallows. Toward dusk, Hannah noticed little stacks of stones behind their tent. 3 stacks, 5 stones each. Balanced perfectly. She thought nothing of it at first. People leave things all the time. But her son Max got weirdly quiet while staring at them. He asked, "Mom, do we have to follow them?" "Follow what?" "The stacks," he said, serious in a way 7-year-olds aren't. "They point." Hannah and her husband laughed it off. After dinner, Max asked if he could blow the emergency whistle they kept for hikes. They let him try it once. The sound echoed up the creek and seemed to come back from the trees a second later, dull and tired. That night the wind rose and fell like someone opening an oven door. Around midnight, Hannah woke to a soft clacking sound like someone tapping stone on stone. She unzipped the tent and peered out. In the moonlight, she saw more stacks around the site. Dozens now. Some were tall, 7 or 8 stones high. Some had a bit of white in them, bone. She told herself they were shells, the inside of river rocks, anything but bone. She went to wake her husband and realized Max wasn't in his sleeping bag. She froze. The clacking came again, farther off. She shouted for him, no answer. She shook her husband awake and they ran out barefoot, their flashlight beams jerking over trees and leaves. Hannah saw small prints leading away in the soft dirt. They followed. After 20 yards, they found Max standing between 2 stacks taller than him. He was facing the dark trees, eyes open, not crying, not moving. In his hand was the whistle. Hannah took his face in her hands and asked what he was doing. "Going where they want," he said. "Who?" He lifted the whistle and pointed it at a particular stack. It had 4 gray stones and 1 pale thing under the top rock. When Hannah's light hit it, she understood it wasn't shell. It was a slice of something curved and porous like chalk. Deer bone. "Don't touch that," she said, and her voice sounded strange in her own ears. The stack trembled like something had brushed it, but there was no wind. They carried Max back. He didn't fight, but he kept looking over Hannah's shoulder at the stacks. She told her husband to throw everything in the car. They could pack the tent later. As they worked, the clacking sound sped up. Somewhere in the trees, stones were tapping faster and faster like impatient knuckles on a desk. When they got in the car, the noise stopped. The headlights washed the stacks white and made the bone shine. Hannah started the engine and pulled out. Max finally cried. "They're gonna be mad," he said. "Who's mad?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't keep the wheel straight. "The ones with no faces," he said. "They said the whistle told them where to go." They didn't sleep that night. They reached a motel around 3 and kept all the lights on. In the morning, they drove home. They would have tried to forget it, but there was one last thing Hannah told me that still makes my chest feel tight. When they got home, there was dirt on their porch that wasn't there when they left. Muddy like creek dirt. On the welcome mat, 5 little stones were stacked with a thin piece of pale bone under the top one. Sitting on top of everything was the whistle. They don't keep one in the house anymore. Max knows not to answer if he ever hears it again. But sometimes late at night he tells Hannah he hears tapping. Very soft in the ductwork, stone on stone, counting out 5. The third site I used to do solo trips to clear my head. Nothing far, just a loop trail a single night back by Sunday. If you go enough, you pick up tiny rules that keep you comfortable. Mine were simple: always camp near water, always keep my boots by the zipper, and never, ever move sites after dark. 2 summers ago I broke that rule. The place was a forest in northern Idaho that I won't name because, honestly, I want to pretend it doesn't exist. The first campsite I found was perfect. Flat ground, a ring of stones for a fire, wood piled by somebody thoughtful. But after an hour something felt off. The trees around me all leaned slightly toward the middle like they were listening. I couldn't shake it. By twilight I bailed. I hiked 20 minutes down trail and found another spot that looked better. Fresh ash in the fire ring, a faded map tucked in the stones. It was colder there though, like the air had more weight to it. I laid out my bag, then noticed the map had a circle around a place labeled Third Site. An arrow pointed toward dense trees farther from the trail. Whoever drew it had written one word, safe. I should have ignored that word. It hooked into my brain. Safe. I packed up and walked toward it with my headlamp bouncing on trunks. 10 minutes in, I found a clearing shaped like an eye. In the middle was a log, sawn flat like a bench. My light caught 3 things laid out on it: a metal cup, a folded wool blanket, and a small jar of clear water sealed tight. No tent, no pack. Just those items waiting. I stood there, sweating in the cool. "Hello?" I tried. The trees swallowed my voice. I didn't sit. I backed away and went back to the second site. My headlamp beam slid over my tent, and I stopped. In the short time I was gone, someone had moved my boots from beside the zipper to the end of my sleeping bag. To inside, if that makes sense. Like they wanted me to get in and pull them in with me. I took one step toward the tent, then a branch cracked behind me. I spun and saw a small flicker down among the trunks. Not fire. A ranger's flashlight, I thought. I called out, "Hello?" A voice came back close. "Evening, sir." It was exactly the friendly tone rangers use when they don't want to startle you. A man stepped into the edge of my light. Heavy boots, green pants, jacket, ball cap. He said, "You're not supposed to camp here. There's a safer site." He pointed into the trees, the same direction as the circled map. "Third one. I can show you." I was relieved for half a second. Then I saw 2 things at once. First, he wasn't wearing a badge. The spot on his chest where one should be was empty and clean, like the fabric was new. Second, the brim of his cap didn't have a shadow. My light was right on him, but no shadow fell across his face. It looked like the light went through the brim and kept going. I said, "No thanks. I'm moving on." He smiled too much and nodded. "Okay, I'll meet you there." He turned and walked into the trees without lifting his feet, more like he slid. I didn't follow. I grabbed my pack and jogged back toward the first site, reasoning that people had been there recently and maybe that was safer. I broke out of the trees and stopped short. The first site was there, the same fire ring, same woodpile, but there was a log in the center sawn flat like a bench with a metal cup, a folded wool blanket, and a jar of clear water placed neatly on it. I didn't breathe for a good 4 seconds. Then I kept walking past it down to the trail, and I did the only dumb thing left. I hiked in the dark. For an hour I moved, never seeing another campsite. I checked my GPS twice. The track showed I was moving in a wide loop, always curving left whether I tried to or not. Eventually the path spilled me into a clearing I knew too well. Eye-shaped, with the bench log, the cup, the blanket, the sealed jar. I sat on the ground and cried a little out of sheer frustration. The night went quiet in the way that only happens deep in the woods. No bugs, no birds, just pressure. Then softly, as if talking right into my ear, I heard the ranger voice again. "Evening, sir." I stood up and spun the headlamp. No one. The voice came again from a different angle. "Third site safe," I shouted. "Where are you?" The answer was right next to my face. Right here. Something cold touched the back of my neck like a damp leaf. Every instinct I had screamed to get low and cover my head. I did. My light landed on the jar. For the first time, I noticed something floating in the water. Not a bug. An air bubble? No. It was a little curled thing like a shedding of dead skin. I unscrewed the lid with shaking hands and poured the water out. The thing slid onto the log, thin and translucent with a tiny seam down one side like a mask made for nothing. I realized it wasn't skin. It was a shed, like what a snake leaves behind. The night wind moved through the clearing. It sounded like someone running their hands over a tarp. Then I heard the soft drag of boots in the leaves circling me. Always just behind my light, I grabbed my pack and I ran. I didn't stop until I hit the trailhead in my car. My GPS track later looked like a scribble. I had been in a circle no wider than a football field most of the night, always coming back to the same 3 sites, the same 3 objects, the same voice. Before I left the parking lot, I looked up. In the trees across the road at about eye height, there were 3 things lined up on a branch. A metal cup, a folded wool blanket, a jar empty now, waiting for something else to fill it. Polaroids in the pines 2 summers back. My friends Ava and Mark invited me and my girlfriend Jess on a long weekend campout near a lake. It was one of those places you hike in for 20 minutes and feel like you're on another planet. Tall pines, the smell of sap like warm sugar, that glassy lake showing upside-down trees. We got there early, swam, cooked, and knocked out by 10, dead tired. Sometime after midnight I woke up to a camera flash. It wasn't loud exactly, but you know the sound. Tiny pop, a quick whine. My eyes burned with that after image, like when somebody takes your picture in a dark room. Jess whispered, "Did you?" "Yeah," I said. We waited. Another pop, closer. Mark called out from his tent. "Ava?" She answered from right beside him, groggy. "What?" We all unzipped. The night was weirdly bright with a low fog. It smelled like wet paper. We stood there in our socks listening. Pop. A flash ahead inside the trees. "Hello?" I tried. The fog turned everything into a wall. A little square of paper drifted down out of nowhere and landed by my foot. It was a Polaroid, still developing. I picked it up. As the image slowly darkened, my stomach went cold. It was a picture of our camp from a few minutes earlier, ghost bright in the flash. You could see our tents in the fire ring. You could also see the four of us sitting around the fire, and in the bottom corner the white blur of a fifth figure. Close to the lens. Too close. "Okay, we're leaving," Mark said. We grabbed our stuff fast and sloppy. Jess stuffed our sleeping bags without rolling them. Ava said she heard something like a finger sliding over a window. As we packed, more little squares drifted down like dead moths. Some hit the tents and stuck. Some landed in the pine needles. We got 10 feet before Ava hissed and pointed. On the trunk of a big pine in front of us there were Polaroids pinned with tiny nails. Dozens. All of them were pictures of our camp from slightly different angles. The fire lower, then higher, then gone. In a few, the fifth figure was clearer. Tall, with shoulders too high and a head that seemed the wrong shape, like the brim of a hat with nothing under it. In one, you could see the back of my own neck as I bent over the cooler, and something standing 2 feet behind me in the dark, its shape just a chalk line of white. We started tearing them down and tossing them. It felt stupid, but we couldn't look away. My hands shook so hard I bent 2 nails. Jess said very quietly, "Guys, why are these dry?" I didn't get what she meant until I realized the fog had soaked everything. The tents, the straps on our packs, even the pine bark. But the Polaroids were bone dry, like they'd been hanging there for days. There was no water beading on them. The whites were pure. We left the board of photos to the trees and went the other direction. The fog got thicker. It muffled our voices in a way that felt like someone covering our mouths. Steps fell in behind us, soft and quick, then stopped when we stopped. We'd walk and they would too, just a beat later, imitating us like a shadow you can hear. We reached the lake's edge. Across the water I saw a white blink. Another flash, then another. Little dots like fireflies, but cold. They seemed to move along the shore, and every time one went off I heard that tiny pop and whine sound. Jess started to cry. We cut into the trees, trying to flank the water, and almost ran into another tree with photos nailed to it. These were different. Closer. Faces. Ours. The first was Ava from earlier, turning to look over her shoulder with a marshmallow on a stick. The second was Mark zipping the tent. The third was Jess asleep with the corner of a blanket in her mouth. The fourth was me, taken from so close you could see a little piece of pine needle stuck to my cheek. They were all perfectly centered and perfectly still, like a studio headshot, but the light looked wrong, flat, directionless. No shadows. There was a fifth photo at the bottom. It was blank white. Not developing. Just white. We stood there staring at it until we heard a footstep, not behind us, not around us, but right above us, as if someone stepped down onto the air. A second later, something dropped from the branches into the fog and landed so softly I wondered if I'd imagined it. Another Polaroid drifted down, slow as ash. It landed on the ground between my shoes. I picked it up without thinking. It was still wet. The picture developed as I watched. It was us standing there looking at photos on a tree. 4 faces turn upward, and behind us, in the shape of the fog, a taller, paler shape turning down. We ran. We didn't stick together well. At some point I heard Ava scream my name and then Mark telling her, "Don't look at it. Don't look at it." The steps behind us didn't try to catch us. They just followed, stopping when we stopped, moving when we moved. The fog thinned near the trailhead. We spilled out, got in the car, and started the engine. When we turned on the headlights, the beams cut through the last of the mist like stage lights. There was a photo on the windshield tucked under the wiper. It was a picture of our car from the front with us inside. 4 blown white faces, eyes too wide. On the ground beneath the photo, lined up in a row, were 4 more, blank and waiting. Back home, a week later, I got a manila envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside were 20 Polaroids. I didn't look at them all. I saw one enough to throw the rest away. A picture taken through our apartment window, of Jess and me asleep, the flash reflected in the glass, and something faint in the reflection, a pale oval where a face should be, turned toward the lens. The back of the photo had a partial thumbprint pressed in what looked like sap. I still check the wiper every time I get in the car. Sometimes I dream in square frames with white borders.